designed to help you start your day grounded, steady, and focused on what matters most. Each weekday morning we'll open Scripture together, seeking clarity, strength, and hope for the day ahead. This is about learning to walk with Jesus in real life, right where you are. Let's begin today in the Word. Well, good morning and welcome to Cornerstone Today. It's Matthew Allen. We're doing this a little different today. We're doing this live out to you. Just thought it would be a little easier to do it this morning that way, and hope you're all having a good morning. I have my coffee in hand, and I am excited to be able to be here with you in Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12 today. That's where we're going to be. As you know, what we're doing right now is we're going through the book of Matthew together, taking just a chapter by chapter overview of what is in the text. Now, Matthew 2, 1 through 12 is a passage that a lot of us are familiar with. It's about the wise men, and I just want you to kind of picture this for a moment. I want you to imagine that you're an astrologer, you're a scholar, you spend your nights watching the sky because you believe that one day the heavens are going to explain something to you. And one night, something changes. A star appears, and it moves or it aligns in a way that you've never seen before. And something in you says, that's it. That's the sign. And so you pick up and you leave everything familiar and you travel hundreds of miles to a country that you've never been to, and you're looking for a king that you've never met. That is where Matthew chapter 2 opens. Not with shepherds, not with a manger. That's Luke's story. Here in Matthew, we start with travelers, outsiders, men from the east who somehow knew that something was happening even before most of Israel did. And I want you to be honest about this. The wise men, the Magi, they have been wrapped in so much tradition that it's hard to see them clearly anymore. We often hear about 3 kings and camels, and maybe we've given them names that were made up centuries later. But here this morning, what I want us to do is look at what Matthew actually says. He calls them the Magi. And that word comes to us from the Persian and Babylonian worlds. These were astrologers, they were scholars, they were court advisors, they were men who studied the stars, and they interpreted signs. And Matthew tells us that they came from the east, which means likely somewhere in Persia or Babylon, which we would call today modern Iraq. Now, note carefully that Matthew doesn't say there were 3 of them. The number that we hear so often, 3 Magi, come from the 3 gifts that were presented. There could have been 2. There could have been 12. We simply don't know how many of them were there. But what we do know is this. They weren't Jewish. They were Gentiles, outsiders to the covenant, to the Torah, and everything that Israel had been promised. And yet, here they are the ones that are showing up looking for the king of Israel. Now, that's no small detail. That is Matthew making a huge statement from page 1 of his gospel. The king is not just for Israel, he is for everyone. So, the Magi arrive in Jerusalem, and they go straight to the palace, which makes sense, right? If you think about it, a king is born, you go to look where kings live, and they walk in and they ask, where is the one who's been born to the King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose, and we have come to worship him. And Herod is troubled. That's the word that Matthew uses, troubled. And it's not just him. The whole city of Jerusalem is unsettled with this news. Now, you have to understand who Herod was. This man was not someone you questioned. He's brutal, he's paranoid, and he is politically ruthless. He had members of his own family executed when he felt threatened. And so what he does is he calls in the chief priests and the scribes, and he asks them where the Messiah was supposed to be born. And they go straight to the scroll of Micah, Bethlehem of Judea. They know the answer. They've got the text memorized. Here's the text. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people, Israel. Now, this should just stop us for a second. They all knew. The Jews knew. The religious leadership of Israel knew the prophecy. They knew the town. They knew the sign. And yet they send the Magi out without them. Not a one of them makes the 5-mile trip out to Bethlehem. The outsiders have come 1,000 miles, and the insiders couldn't manage 5. So Herod pulls the Magi aside privately, and he asks them exactly when the star appeared. Now, he's doing the math in his head. He's trying to figure out how old this child is. And then what he does is he sends them to Bethlehem with a request that sounds generous, but it is anything but that. He says, go and search carefully for the child. And as soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him. Now, he has no intention of worshiping, and he is going to try his best to eliminate what he considers to be a threat. But the Magi leave Jerusalem, and the star moves, or it reappears. Matthew says they had seen the star when it rose ahead of them, or until it stopped over the place where the child was. Now, whatever this star was, and people have been debating this for 2,000 years, it led them to a house, not a stable. Matthew says a house. And think about it. Jesus is probably a toddler by this point. He's not a newborn. Mary and Joseph have settled in Bethlehem. And so when the Magi walk in and they see the child, Matthew says they fall down and they worship him. Now, these are educated, powerful men, scholars with standing, and they bow to a toddler in a house in a small Judean town. They open up their treasures, gold and frankincense and myrrh, and each one of these things are significant. They're given for royalty, and frankincense for priesthood, and myrrh to be used in burial. Even in this moment of joy, there's a shadow of what's coming. But as we read this text, there's some things that we should keep coming back to. What did the Magi actually know? Well, they knew something significant had happened. They knew it from the sky. They knew it from creation itself, pointing to the Creator. They knew enough to make a massive sacrifice, time and money and comfort and safety to go looking. But they didn't have the Torah. They didn't have centuries of prophecy the way the scribes did. They were working with far less, and yet they found him, and they worshiped. They were also warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, and without hesitation, they listened. They returned home by a different route. No debate, no second guessing. They knew they had encountered something real, and they responded to it. And I think that is what Matthew wants us to see. The wise men weren't wise because they had all the information. They were wise because they acted on what they knew. They followed the light they had, and it led them to the light of the world. Meanwhile, the people with every advantage, the scrolls, the training, and the proximity, they all stayed home. And so here's the question I want to leave you with this morning. Which one am I? Which one are you? Are we someone who knows all the answers, who can quote prophecy and point to the town and explain the theology, but never actually make the trip? Or Are we willing to follow what we know, what's inconvenient, even when the road is long and we may not have the full picture yet? The Magi didn't have everything figured out. They just knew enough to take the next step, and that might be all that any of us need. So, thanks for being with us here this morning on Cornerstone Today. I hope that you've enjoyed it. It's a little different today doing it live, but I think it's come off pretty well. We will see you here back on Thursday morning. We're going to be looking at the next section of Matthew that will run through the end of the chapter, Matthew 2, verses 13 through 23. And we'll be talking about when God says run. It gets harder before it gets clearer, but it's worth staying with. We'll see you again on Thursday. Everybody have a great day today. These moments in the Word today. As you go, remember this: faithfulness is built one ordinary day at a time. Keep walking with Jesus. Keep listening. Keep trusting. God is at work all the time. Join us again every weekday morning for another moment of encouragement and truth here on Cornerstone Today.